John with National Sports Entertainment. And I wanted to go into our college schedule because we got a couple games tomorrow, some tonight. Well, technically, I'm not playing any of these, but for tomorrow, we got Colorado. We got a bunch the next day, obviously. And Colorado's one that I have had my eye on for a little bit. So we got the Chiefs tonight, too, so I'll be going into that. That one I'm still actually looking at as far as if I think they're going to have Russell Wilson be embarrassed or if they're still going to retain some of his dignity and make him look competent enough to at least hang. But anyway, I wanted to go into again. We got about a dozen plays for the college weekend, and they are all metric plays. By metric plays, I mean I am just playing the numbers. So for those who don't know my strategy, and it's a pretty successful strategy, if you go back, I can go back as many years as you guys want, but let's just go back. Look on the other end. Okay, you flip a coin once, you're going to get one result. So, you really look for teams that played a full schedule, and then on the other end again, Miami, lining right up at that 84% on the upper threshold. Two losses, or two wins. I'm sorry. So same thing, just on the opposite end, 16%, 16%. Three teams at 16%, and then it jumps right up to the high 20s, low 30s. So you can see we don't have 10, 20 teams. There's a rule that a team cannot go winless or undefeated against the spread. It's pretty insane. Now, if you go down, you'll see the rest of them in that normal threshold. That's 16 to 18. That's, again, usually the lowest you're going to see a team finish. Let's even go back to the COVID year, which was half a schedule, so of course it's going to be higher. And even in that year, outside of a lot of times you'll see Jacksonville State, you'll see James Madison, because they only played a couple games that were recognized because they're in, I think, like a D2 school or something. I don't think they're a D2 school, but they're just a school that doesn't get a lot of their spreads recognized. But anyway, you can see here 7-1-1, 6-1. Only a few teams with half a schedule with one loss on the spread. The rest, two or more. And then if you go to the bottom half, again, the same thing. You got a bunch of 1-4s here, 1-5, 1-7. Nobody had one. Nobody, even the ones that played 2-3 games. It's very interesting. So, again, if you play less than a full schedule, then I don't really count it. But yeah, you can go back to any year you want, and you're going to see the same exact thing. Again, it's 10-3. This one's on the lower end. And then for the losing team, you had one team, Akron, 1-11. So my point is, the hundreds of schools you might see, and it's a big might. Some years you only have 2-3 losses, but you might see one school with one win or one loss against the spread, and the rest of the teams are going to have their 2-3 losses. They're not going to finish perfect, and the same can be extrapolated from the over under. You can see it's almost the exact same, 11-3 being the highest, and the lowest being the one. Actually, we picked the funny thing about Colorado State, them and Kentucky. So last year we had a bunch of teams on the over under. It was getting towards the end of the year, and I'm like, these teams got to go over. They can't be this sorry. So Colorado State was one of the teams that actually burnt us. It didn't matter because we made money from teams like Nebraska and Kent State and UConn and Hawaii, who started going over towards the end of the year. That's what happens. You have all these teams that haven't gone over, and then most of them start going over. But what was kind of funny about this one, not funny to the people that lost, but including myself, but Colorado State just could not go over. And I only knew about them because they did the Dion before Dion did the Dion. So their coach Norvell had taken a bunch of players from, I believe it was Nevada, and was like, yeah, we're gonna start over at CSU, and they wound up getting matched up against Nevada. And it's funny because when he did it, everyone was calling him a scumbag and dirty player, dirty coach. They were saying how his tactics were wrong, and Nevada was there. The Nevada and basically rooting for Nevada, saying, yeah, Nevada hopefully will beat them to teach them a lesson. Then Dion does it, and he's considered the Jesus of college football. But obviously, that's narratives. Colorado State was interesting because, again, they would not go over. They sucked that bad. I kept picking them to go over, and it was only if their opponents put up like 28 or 31 did Colorado State have any chance of going over, because they weren't dropping more than 10 points a game. That's why when I saw the 3-point spread with Colorado this year, I just thought it was ridiculous. Of course, I fell for it because of the stupid narrative around. But anyway, yeah, I just see Colorado State. It makes me laugh how they somehow go from so bad to so good in 1 year. And then Kentucky, who had a Heisman, and Will Levis, Heisman contender at quarterback, only went over one time, but unquestioned. But my point is, you see there's only about a team or two that's going to fall under this category. So let's move to this. This is the easiest way to make money. I've done it with hockey, college. The spread is really the one metric that I've noticed every single year. It falls between the same amount. If you go to any sport and go back the years, the highest and lowest teams are going to be right around that same number. So anyway, we have Rutgers undefeated against the spread, UNLV undefeated, your Oregon undefeated, Penn State undefeated, Oklahoma undefeated. So you picks. These are my picks. So I'll be showing all of them in a second. Illinois, obviously taking them. Vandy taking them. And then I couldn't do this 3-4 weeks in the season because when you're 0-3, you can lose again and go to 0-4. Like a bunch of teams have done that. But once you get to 4 or 5 weeks in, you start seeing teams get off that zero. So we still have a bunch of teams on the goose egg. We have a bunch of teams that are undefeated and a bunch of only one win or loss against the spread or with the over. So instead of going through each and every one, I figured I would just go here. So I post them all here early here. But so if you go through this, all I did is I went through our sequences. So sequence 27, for example, we had an open leg 2. I had Vandy covering Missouri. You can see I was already implementing this strategy. They did not cover. I decided for leg 3 we're going to go with the under because Vandy this happens a lot. Vandy not only has not covered all year, but they haven't gone under all year. They're 7-0 to the over, and when it's set at 55.5, I feel like people are going to pound that over. It's not just the historical aspect that I like to explain, but also common sense. If you have a team that's not gone under all year, and this is how handicappers pick, they'll tell you take this team because they've gone over X amount of times, so they're definitely going to go over. Mine's the opposite logic. They've gone over so many times, they're going to get slammed. I like the under. So we got 55.5, which you'd think would be higher. Georgia just put up a ton of points, and Vandy hasn't gone under all year. Makes me think Georgia might win in like a 42-0 blowout or something. So that's the reason I went with the leg 3 for Vandy to go under. I like that a little more than the cover, but I still like both. Now here we have Pitt and Louisville. Now this one, it's kind of the similar logic that I used on UTEP earlier. Basically for my UTEP pick, I had just explained that UTEP had not, again, they were 1-5 on the spread. FIU was pretty good on the spread, and it was a 3.5 point spread. So I said, I think that we might as well go for the money line with the 3.5. If they cover, there's a good chance they're going to win, and they did. So I will invoke that logic a lot, which is a little counterintuitive because we really do want to just play the spreads. But if I feel like it's a trap line, if I feel like if they cover, they're probably going to win anyway, then I'm going to go with the money line. So here his next one is a great shot at some value. For a leg 2, we got Pitt straight up beating Louisville. It's for a few reasons. One, I'm pretty sure Louisville's undefeated. They might not be undefeated, but they're ranked and they are at worst 1 loss. And I think they are undefeated. We'll check in a second. Pitt is 1-5, playing terrible this year. Only a 7-point dog, 6.5. It's going to. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. People are going to be pounding Louisville, so I absolutely love Pitt in this game. Miami UNC is the same type of principle. The difference is I took it looks like a trap to me if I'm being honest. And another reason I'm taking these teams is if you notice, as I do this, look at the amount of undefeated teams we have. It's pretty insane. We have about 15 undefeated teams. Now, using this logic, and it did help us. We started thinning out the herd because you're not going to have that many teams finish undefeated. You see last year we had 1 team with 1 loss. Now, of course, in the playoffs you're going to get some losses. I get that. But even without that, we have a bunch of teams here with 2-3 losses. Only 1 finished undefeated. And only a few. I think we had 2. I think it was Georgia and Michigan. It might have been TCU as well. Or didn't Michigan lose? They might have lost. I can't remember exactly how it went down. But either way, we only had a few of these teams go undefeated into the playoffs. We didn't have 8 to 10 teams that were undefeated. So we got about, like I said, between 10 and 15 right now. So I basically just started fading some of these undefeated teams, the ones that it makes sense that they would lose. Does it make sense that Georgia would lose? No. Does it make sense that Michigan would lose? Probably not. I was eyeing Ohio State. I could see if Purdue upset, but I'm not playing that. So we're fading Penn State. As I went over Louisville, North Carolina right here, fading them again. Looks like a trap to me. 3.5 looks very light, and I think they're going to give the Hurricanes coach a little bit of redemption. So these are some of the reasons that I went ahead and took Miami to win, Pitt to win. It's using my spread metric, trying to get good value, but also looking at, okay, we got a bunch of undefeated teams. Which ones make the most sense to lose? Some teams just go over all year. Like I said, there are outliers, so I'm trying to pinpoint that outlier. And LSU, I was going to play them as a leg 3 because they're like 7-0 to the over. But you will, like that Colorado State, you will see that one team that just seems to constantly go over or constantly go under no matter what. So I have a feeling LSU might be that team just based off of just how bad and sorry their defense is letting people score. So I went ahead and took it as a leg 2. But again, it's another great metric. People are probably going to be pounding the over on this game. They've given up 80 points or something in the last 2 games. So even when they're like not giving up that many points, they find a way to somehow go way over. So it's pretty insane. So I do like that as a leg 2. Now, I'm going to hit Colorado in a second because there's a specific reason I like Colorado to cover. It has nothing to do with spread metrics. The rest of these are leg 1s. So all these are going to be for 1 unit. UMass and Penn, I like them to go. Penn State, I like them to go under 56. Penn State has gone over, I think, about every game this year. Utah Cal, I love the over because Utah hasn't gone over once all year. They're the only team in college who hasn't gone over once all year. Washington covering Oregon. I like this play because to me it's a little bit of a trap. They are both undefeated, but Oregon and Bo Nix are definitely being pushed as a better team. So I think that, again, this is to make the entire Pac-12 look deadly. Oregon's already deadly looking. They got Colorado looking good. USC is deadly looking. Washington winning this game makes sense to me. The same reason I had UCLA winning last week. Then we got Michigan State. I want the straight-up win. Rutgers, I believe they haven't lost against the spread all year. So with it being about a 3.5, 4-point spread, to me, it was worth going with the straight-up win for Michigan State. Also looks a little trappish. Same logic for Nevada. You could see I took a good bit of value plus odd picks, and it's because we're playing them as leg ones. Sometimes I'll play them as like a leg 2 or leg 3, but when I'm playing it as a leg 1, we get 2 more cracks at it, and I do like going for plus value. So we got plus 270 here for Nevada to win outright. UNLV is undefeated against the spread. Nevada hasn't won a game all year. To me, that combination of things, people are going to be taking UNLV pretty hard in my opinion. So Nevada to win. Like I said about Vandy, I feel like they might get smoked. So I like the under a lot better than I like the cover, but I still like the metric. I'm sticking to my metric, so that's going to be a leg 1. And Illinois, I thought about taking the upset. I did. I thought, maybe they do it, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I like the cover to be safer, and that's plus 14. So it's a good bit of plays, and because it's been interesting with Colorado. We had the first 4 weeks we picked wrong with Dion, but each week we seemed to get a better and better idea. So week 1 was TCU, and my logic was they will not be paying out the public. So I just went with TCU. The next week I had the same logic. I was like, okay, they paid out the public once. Now it's a trap. They should be bigger favorites. I think Nebraska was actually favorites. So we went with Nebraska, and they lost. Then week 3, they had the sunglasses narrative. So I was like, okay, yeah, definitely going to go with Colorado to smoke them. And, of course, they made it that ridiculous 3-point game. And then the next week was Oregon, where I'm like, okay, they got to keep them competitive. They got blown off the field. So we were doing pretty bad with Dion despite hitting the Dion parlay, the 71-1, despite seeing the connection in the NFL with all of his teams. Somehow we just couldn't pick Dion. Then the next week we were pretty darn close. I had him backdoor covering USC, knowing that the nation was not going to be they were going to be completely on USC, and they did. And last week we got him down to the final score, knowing it was obviously going to be an exactly 3-point win by Colorado. To me, that was the most obvious game of the year. When you see a hook like that, it's just obvious. So to me, this one's pretty obvious too, if I'm being honest. This is what I like to call, well, it's a casualty game for Stanford, in my opinion. This is a game where it's to make Colorado look really good. There's no other way to put it. Colorado has, if you think about it, they've won every one of their games by 3 points. They beat, they beat TC, or they beat Nebraska. I thought they might have beat them by a little more than 3. I can't remember the exact score. They didn't beat them by that much. I know that. They beat Colorado State by 3 points. They beat TCU by, was it 3 points or was it 7? I think it was 3, 45-42. And then they just beat Arizona State by 3 points. So they're being portrayed as the resilient team, though they won't give up, these Brady comebacks. But I think you have to show that they're also a good team. So when they go up against a crappy team and you have these Heisman candidates, and again, you're coming off a game where you're just won by 3, then the 2 weeks prior to that, you got beat pretty bad. I think it stands to reason they're going to have Colorado win this game and decisively. And at 11.5, even though people will probably be on Colorado, I don't think it's going to get slammed like a typical primetime game, just because you're coming off, again, 2 pretty rough weeks, and then a week where they barely won a game that they should have won by more. I think that they've done a great job of getting the entire nation off of Colorado. So, yeah, they might get picked this week, but it's not going to be a major market game, in my opinion, like some of these other weeks. So I absolutely love Colorado to not only win this game, but to cover. To me, this is the game where they have to win something like 42-17. And then Dion can say, hey, we didn't play like hot garbage. Because that's been one of the terms he wants to trademark. how they've looked like hot garbage all year and they can't get it going. Their offense gets going, their defense can't go. Their defense gets it going, their special teams can't go. So to me, this is the perfect example of a game where they have Colorado win a game that they should win, and they can have them just blow Stanford right off the field, which is what I think is going to happen. Also on Friday the 13th, I am very lucky on Friday the 13th. I don't know what it is. I just seem to have very good luck on Friday the 13th. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, I think Colorado covers. So this is the one game I'm not playing because of metrics. It's a straight up narrative game. And that's why we had Colorado last week, where we actually had that we took them on the money line on a parlay. Even though you'd say, oh, with 3 points, why'd you do that? I did it because I knew they weren't going to cover the spread. They were 3.5. Last minute moved to 3, just so obvious. So half the people pushed, half the people lost, except us because we money lined it with Ole Miss. So just trying to find those traps is one of the things, and I think I found them with a few games this week. I think Pittsburgh is such a trap. Louisville. UNC Miami looks like a trap. I think more people are going to be on UNC, especially after Miami's colossal meltdown. But yeah, to me, this game, Colorado definitely wins it. Sure, you could have them lose and trick the public, but I don't think that makes much sense. At home especially, you're trying to get hype for Dion. You want to get this team as many wins as you can get them to. Like I said, they're not getting 8, 9 wins, but I think they might get 7. They're going to get them to a winning record. So start them off 5-2. I think that's definitely the way they're going to go. They're 11-point favorites. So again, it just comes down to if they cover. It actually moved to 11.5. I got it at 11. I posted it earlier, but either way, I don't think the half point's going to matter here. I think we're looking at a 3-score or more victory. Like I said, something like 42-27 sounds right, or 42-17 sounds right. What's interesting is Colorado has scored 42 a couple times this year, haven't they? Let's see, they scored 36, 43, 42, 48, so they're like... I wonder if that's by design. But anyway, so I like Colorado's a leg 3 for that reason. And as you can see, we only have 2 leg 3s, the Colorado cover and the Vandy Georgia under. Those are the 2 that I love as leg 3s. And these sequences are just sequences that we opened up. So I had Michigan covering, they didn't. I had Missouri covering, they didn't. So for leg 3, 4 units to net 1 unit, we'll be playing the Georgia Vandy under. Now ones like this are interesting. The Pitt beat Louisville. This is the reason I do my system the way I do. Because if we got this on a leg 1, it's a 2.5 unit profit, obviously. But by getting it on a leg 2, it depends on what your unit is, of course. But you're getting closer to 3 units net profit just because we're playing it as a leg 2. So with this system, not only do we get 3 cracks at netting at least 1 unit, but as it becomes a leg 2 or a leg 3 and it's higher value, it exponentially increases in our net. So again, it's a little difficult to explain if you're not exactly familiar with my system. But basically, if this was a leg 2, it's about 3 units we'll be netting because my units are 25.50, right? So 25 and 50 is 75, and it's going to be 50 to win about 125. So it's 75 to win 175. It's actually exactly a 4 unit net because we're adding up the 25 from unit 1 and the 50 from unit 2, which is 75 to win 175. Obviously, the 75 we put out, we don't count that. But that leaves 100, which is 4 units because our unit size is 25. So, yeah, we get this on a leg 1, it's a 2.5 unit net. We get this very same pick on a leg 2, and it's a 4 unit net. We get this very same pick on a leg 3, and it's almost an 8 unit net. So, I think it is exactly an 8 unit net. So, there's a reason I do this system. I know a lot of people might not be too excited and entertained about numbers, but that's what this comes down to. There's a reason we've done successfully is because I just stick to the bare numbers. So, this pick I really like. Even if it doesn't hit, it's all right. We got a leg 3 to work with. But if it does hit, again, we're only supposed to net 1 unit on each sequence. But by incorporating the plus value here, again, we got a shot of hitting the equivalent of 4 sequences if Pitt is to win this game outright. And like I said, I just think the line's a complete trap. Same with Miami UNC. You're only getting 1.5 on a leg 1. You play it as a leg 2, we're getting over 2 units. So... and that's net. That's including the leg 1 loss and everything. So that's the reason I'm doing a couple more plus values. Again, our hit rate's probably going to be a little lower, but at the end of the day, we're going to be getting higher value, and with the 3-leg system, it's just kind of foolish, in my opinion, to constantly do even value. I've noticed doing the alt lines, we did with hockey, by the way, it's coming up. Hockey season just started. We hit so many plus 200s or better last year doing alt lines in college, just taking teams that sucked against the spread. And hockey, sorry. We did it in college too, but hockey it really works with because the puck line, you're going to get crazy good odds by taking the alternate line on a crappy team or something to that extent, which is what we did last year. So, yeah, I like to play the plus odds. So we got a good bit of them in here, as you can see. And we got a good bit of plays in total. But here's exactly where they stand, which ones are leg ones. I got them all posted last, obviously, make it a little easier. And then our leg 2 and leg 3s are right here. So there's all of our plays. As always, I like to put every single one of them out beforehand so anybody can see them, play them, and see that we did this in live time. I say this every week, but I do think we're going to have a great week. With college especially, as the season wears on, you're not, as I showed you guys, you're not going to have handfuls upon handfuls of teams undefeated against the spread or undefeated on the over. And you're certainly not going to have handfuls of teams that are undefeated in general. So that's why I like Louisville and UNC to lose, just because I think some of these teams might be losing. I think I think Purdue might be worth a play. I'm not personally playing it, but all the top teams from last year are basically undefeated still. USC, I consider them a top team from last year. They still had Caleb. Now we got Oregon undefeated. That'll fix itself because they're playing Washington, but even still, because they're both undefeated. FSU, and then obviously all the new teams. They're talking about how all the basketball schools, which I pointed out last year. I asked people, I was like, is it weird that all these basketball schools are suddenly playing amazing football? And a few people thought it was odd, and then I saw an ESPN article showing all these top basketball schools are now football schools, and it's great for all these different reasons. So my point is we're just not going to have this many teams finish undefeated. Miami's a play I like a lot because of the narrative, but also, again, UNC is, I believe they're not only undefeated, but really good against the spread. Miami, not so much. So it's just another one that fits the metric, but it also fits the narrative. But yeah, I know this isn't the most fun for some people, but again, if you just like to tail and have the best shot of profits, this is the way to go. Anybody will tell you using these metrics has been good ever since we've started doing it. It's just something weird, and you can check any league. You're going to see that no matter what the league is, the team, you're not going to have X amount of teams finish with a certain percentage. So, for example, in the NFL, they fall between high 30s, like 39, 38%, and actually high 60s. They don't even fall into the 70s. So they'll be between 39% and like 66%. You go back 30 years, you're not going to see a team at 20%. You might find one. I think the year the Patriots went undefeated, they only missed like 2 covers. And even that, they still missed 2 covers, but it's really far in between that you get an outlier. And even when we do get an outlier, we're playing so many games. We're playing all the teams that suck against the spread. So if one of them happens to be an outlier, it's more than mitigated by all the other teams we're picking. So yeah, I wanted to go into this without too much detail, but I wanted to put some focus on my spread metrics because some people might not know exactly what I mean by fading the spread or just taking teams that suck against the spread, why I do it. It's twofold. One, again, the public is psychologically conditioned to pick a team that is undefeated against the spread versus a team that has not won against the spread. Handicappers see that. They suggest it all the time. I don't know why. It's actually the opposite. And then secondly, like I said, just going back, I'm just playing history and playing on the side of history that, okay, this team's not going to defy history, or this group of teams, I should say, is not going to defy history and all finish undefeated or winless against the spread or on the over, under, etc. So I have found it to work. It's been really good for us. This week, again, basically every play is because of the spread. A couple narrative games, like I said, Colorado is a narrative game, only because I think we're going to be pretty hot on Deion going forward. Again, missed the first 4, got the last 2. I think we're going to get it to 3 straight with Deion, just because this week seems pretty obvious. You got to get Colorado to have one impressive blowout performance where they didn't come back and barely win a game. And to me, this is that game. So I'll be going to Denver, Kansas City. The over-under is very interesting in that game. I think it's a little off if you look at the line. And I'm just thinking if Kansas City's going to win by double digits or not. I'm leaning that way because you got a rivalry game. The Broncos, they played pretty bad, but Russ hasn't looked terrible. And the fact that it's a rivalry game has me thinking the public might be giving them the benefit of the doubt and taking the 10.5. But I'll have to see what the talking heads are saying and if I believe that they want Peyton and Russell Wilson to have a primetime blow-up, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. They're playing the night after Dion, so Dion's, the perfect coach, over here. He's the guy that, from Remember the Titans, meets the replacements. He's just a perfect father on the field. So maybe they want to show us the anti-Dion in Sean Payton, Mr. Bountygate, just yelling at Russell Wilson and being a horrible human being who nobody wants to see succeed. So to me, I didn't even realize he's Denver also. I find it pretty interesting that they have the most, at least they're portrayed this way, the most loving and the most toxic coaches, and one's in the NFL, one's in college. Again, I went over this before. We've seen some of the stupidest coaching. Oh, here's UTEP. Yeah, they came through pretty nice. Again, 1-5. When you get a 3.5-point spread, when you have this team, they were 1-26, by the way, in their last 27 games on the East Coast. I saw that stat earlier. Made me like them even more. I'm like, who's going to be taking UTEP? So, yeah, I thought UTEP was a good pick. But anyway, yeah, to me, it's funny how you have Sean Payton, who's like the anti-Dion. And I think it's just setting up because we're seeing dumb coaching after dumb coaching. Perfect example is Miami. That does not happen even in Madden. If you're playing Madden for money, you're kneeling the ball in that spot. So there's just no excuse for a coach to be like, oh, yeah, it was my fault. We'll get him next time. Like, if you're that stupid, you shouldn't be coaching. To not run or to not kneel the ball is just absolutely absurd. Of course, people will buy it right up. And, of course, this is all just to throw games and set up stories. No coach would be that stupid. We're also seeing coaches on, 2nd and 1. I've seen it all year now. Despite the Philly tush-push being basically unstoppable, we're seeing so many coaches coming on 2nd and 1 and run end-arounds, counters, lose yards. Then they don't get the first down. It's 4th and less than an inch and they're punting it. And then it's 4th and 5 that they're going for. There's no rhyme or reason to the coaching this year. It's absolutely abysmal. I genuinely think it's all in the name of Dion and making him look better. Because we're seeing coaches that never did things like this suddenly playing like a 12-year-old playing Madden. Just doing stupid things. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that noticed that. Something like Miami is happening every week. And then it's happening on smaller levels where they're just making dumb mistakes. Horrible time management, not understanding the value, the points. Okay, there's 4 minutes left. I'm up by 4. What should I do here? Just doing the wrong decision almost every time is what it seems like. So, again, a little long-winded, but it just makes me think that Sean Payton might have a pretty bad game. And a lot of coaches, I have a feeling, are going to blow some games this year so they can bring in Dion's new coaching tree. All these guys are going to come out of the woodwork, mark my words. And it's going to be like, oh, this guy's a Dion guy, this guy's a Dion guy, this guy's a Dion guy. And they're going to break in just like Belichick's tree or Parcells' tree, Dungy. Anybody that was great, had a great coaching tree. Wait till you see Dion's coaching tree. It's going to be absolutely absurd. And I have no doubt that we're going to start seeing it pretty soon. So, yeah, my favorite college play of the week is probably the Colorado cover. Again, I think they win something like, they'll be in the 40s, I think 44-17. Maybe it's not that big of a blowout, but I think they score pretty often, and I think we finally see some decent defense from Colorado. They're going to learn how to tackle suddenly, not blow assignments, and it's because they're playing some pretty good teams coming up after this, so you got to have them look like they have a shot, right? Make them 5-2. They just blew out Stanford. Now some people might take them to beat Washington and some of these other schools. So, again, I think it's pretty obvious at this point what they're doing with Colorado ever since the Oregon blowout. And then they set that ridiculous USC line at the same number. Then the next week, 3 points. It's just so obvious. So now I'm just trying to look at what makes the most sense from not only a paying the public perspective, but also a narrative perspective. And for both, I like Colorado for this cover. So like I said, I'll go into Denver. I'll go into the Chiefs. I just wanted to hit all of our college games, get them out of the way, because, again, they're just numbers, as you can see. So I wanted to really hit the number aspect of that so you can see why I like the teams I do and why it's worked in the past. I like to show the historical element to it too, because if you go back as long as you want, you're not going to see a year where a bunch of teams finished over against the spread. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, I think we do good this week. And again, I'll have the NFL picks out. Kansas City will be first, of course, since they play tomorrow night. Tonight, technically. But I wanted to get all these out because it's a bunch of plays, and I wanted to go into the reason besides just saying I like the metric. I wanted to actually go and show you guys why I like the metric so much, because I've seen it work. It's worked for us already. I've experienced it working, and I've cross-analyzed it going back to 20 years, and it's always the same. So when I see something like that, it makes me want to go ahead and just go with the side of numbers. That long term, at the end of the year, we're not going to have all these teams with a certain record against the spread. So again, not the most entertaining, I get that, but it's all about beating Vegas, and definitely our best shot is looking at all the teams that, in my opinion, are going to get faded pretty hard and taking them. So we'll see how we do, and I'll have my Kansas City video out next, them versus Denver. Take care and happy earnings.